published in 1419 a map of the Eastern Hemisphere, which showed Australia, South America. Sorry, it didn't show South America. It showed Australia and the Eastern Hemisphere as far as China, including rivers which the Chinese didn't, which the Europeans didn't reach for another 100 years. So this 1419 map, which Diverger published, was a copy of Zhonghe's 1418 map. And it shows exactly the same things as Zhonghe's 1418 map. It shows South Africa, the correct shape, 50 years before Europeans reached South Africa. It shows islands in the Indian Ocean 100 years before Europeans discovered them. It shows northern Australia 300-odd years before Captain Cook, and so on. So that's why Venetians have always been in the driving seat, because they were long-established trading partners of China.
I noticed you also said that there were thousands of Asian slave girls ended up in Venice as well from Alexandria.
There were. You can show the huge trading relationship between Venice and China going back hundreds and hundreds of years in the baptismal records of medieval Venice. So if you go see to whom were the babies born in the hospitals in the 1440s, a very high percentage is Asian children who were the sons and daughters of slaves which were brought by ship from China to Venice.
Remember when I asked you what was the book that Leonardo had seen, these pictures or illustrations of inventions? What I thought I was referring to was the Nungshu.
The Nungshu is a Chinese book. It's the book from which Takala copied this mass of machines. And it was published, I've got the exact date here. It was published in 1313, and the Chinese versions were destroyed in various uprisings, Boxer uprising and so on. But fortunately, parts of this book have turned up in the British Library in London and in the Asian Library in Cambridge and in Chicago. So quite a bit of the book has survived. And basically, it's a book about machines. It was the first printed book, as far as anyone knows. And what I argue in 1434 is that was the book from which Takala drew his machines, and Di Giorgio then improved upon Takala, and Leonardo da Vinci improved further, substantially improved on Di Giorgio's work. So I lay out the evidence in my book, 1434, that the Nungshu was in fact the basis for a very large number of Leonardo's much better drawings of machines.
It was about agriculture and agricultural engineering as well, correct?
Exactly that, absolutely. I summarize Leonardo's work. He really based it on a vast amount of work done by Di Giorgio and Takala, who based their work on this Chinese book, the Nungshu, published in 1313. And he also based his parachute on Di Giorgio's, his helicopter on Takala's, and his books and works on perspective on Alberti's De Pictura and De Statuae. So really, I say that, if I could summarize what I wrote in the book, Leonardo's three-dimensional illustrations of the components of man and machines are a unique and brilliant contribution to civilization, as are his sublime sculptures and paintings. But none of it was an original invention. It was based on the work of others.
Are you familiar with people inventing things in different parts of the world during the same time window, where someone comes up with an idea for something and then somehow in a parallel universe, and that idea realm comes to these people in completely different parts of the world, but they don't know each other and they don't know what came to each other. But my question to you in this context, though, of sometimes things coming in completely different parts of the world at the same time, but nobody knows, right? How does that in context relate to the evidence for who is the original? Doesn't it expand the thought of what is original? Because if that happens in that case, in that particular case, something showed up simultaneously to people who were maybe receptive or sitting around who put a conclusion together, then who was the original?
That's undoubtedly true what you say, but what I really argue, I think, is that in my book 1434, if you draw a line 1434 when the Chinese arrived, and you put before 1434 the various inventions that Alberti, Toscanelli, Fontana, Taccola, Regiomontanus, and Di Giorgio produced, all the discoveries and inventions, there's virtually nothing, absolutely nothing happened before 1434. Then after 1434, there's just a massive amount of every sort of invention, new evidence, astronomy, mathematics, algebra, painting, sculpture, inventions of machines, torquetums, and God knows what. Huge, huge volume of stuff. And there's so much came between 1434 and 1470 that I think one can perfectly legitimately argue, yes, there might have been inventions in other parts of the world, but not on that scale, not 50, 60, 100 different ideas and inventions which suddenly hit everyone with force in the 30 or 40 years after 1434. So, for example, in that period, you have, for the first time, Europeans appreciating that the solar system, the sun, is the center and not the Earth, with all that implies. You have a whole lot of work on comets, forerunner of Kepler. You have forerunner of Newton in gravitational field, of Copernicus, of Galileo, and goodness knows how many new inventions, new pumps, military machines, guns, bazookas, mortars, machine guns, underwater missiles and projectiles. I mean, it's just an amazing explosion. Now, I can show that every single one of the new military and civil machines had appeared in Chinese drawings, most of them in this one book, which we've talked about. So I say it's just too much to put it all down to.
Got it. Before we close today, there's so much information in 1421, but also in 1434. So much information. The level of detail. I mean, if somebody is not interested to know the level of detail and how the dots connect, context in which things are emerging, and synchronistic things that have happened, then don't read it. But if you're interested to really know the full detail, you get it, which I think is extraordinary. You speak about Robert Cribbs.
Yes.
And you spoke a little bit about declination and the stars
Yes.
at the very beginning of this show.
Yes.
But Robert Cribbs influenced your understanding in something. I want you to share it with us.
Right. Well, what I tried to do is make, as you say, a pretty complex argument with a whole mass of evidence into something which an ordinary person like myself could read. So, to use a sort of vulgar term, the white van driver, people who rely on manual work to make their living. We tried to make the book readable to them. Now, this requires a hell of a lot of expert help. Got to find experts who not only know exactly what they're talking about, but they can put it over